Here we are back with our story, Ruth and the Green Book by Calvin Alexander Ramsey with Gwen Strauss and illustrated by Floyd Cooper. We have been traveling the country in the early 1950s with Ruth and her family who are traveling down south from Chicago to Alabama to visit the grandma and have a nice visit. What has happened so far in our book was exciting, but also disturbing, because Ruth and her family weren't able to go into certain places, to the hotel, or even to use the bathroom at a different gas station. However, they ended up at an Esso station in Tennessee, where they were advised to take this copy of the Green Book and buy it. And that is where they found their way into places that would be safe. Now, I'm pausing for a moment before I get started. There's an important period of history that's even going on to this day called the Civil Rights Movement. These people were very important in helping Ruth and her family cross the country safely. We had Mr. Victor Hugo Green, the writer of the book, back in the 40s. We had Miss Ella Baker, who worked with also Bayard Rustin, and here he is. And we also have had Miss Septima Clark, and she was called the mother of the movement. She was a teacher in the South and fought for equal pay for teachers who were Black and teachers who were white. All this is brewing in the background and happening as Ruth crosses the country, and even today still happening as people pay careful attention to what justice is. I'm going to go back into our book. We've had a happy moment here because they have the Green Book and they found a place to stay. Mama read about a place nearby called a tourist home where we could stay for the last night of our trip. Daddy called ahead, and sure enough, the lady told us to come right on over. Then Mama gave me the Green Book and said I was in charge of keeping it. I couldn't stop reading it, all those places in all those states where we could go and not worry about being turned away. We reached the tourist home in the early evening, and Mrs. Melody, the owner, gave us a big smile when she opened the door. It was like coming home. And she wouldn't even let Daddy pay her. She said she welcomed Negro travelers because it was right to help each other out. I'm going to do the same one day. There's Mrs. Melody with a big smile on her face. Another beautiful illustration. The next morning, I hated to say goodbye to Mrs. Melody, but Daddy said we could be at Grandma's that evening. That made me happy to get going again. It wasn't so easy, though. Our automobile broke down about midday in the middle of nowhere. People drove right past. I felt empty in the pit of my stomach. I hugged Brown Bear and wished we were already at Grandma's house. But Mama said, not to worry, we could figure this out. She unfolded our map and told me the names of the nearby towns. She said, Ruth, look in the Green Book and see if you can find a place in one of these towns that will fix our car. And I did. Daddy gave me a big hug, and then he walked into town to find a garage that would help. Ruth is being a super big help to our family, and her face shows she's proud. By the time we got the car fixed, it was too late to reach Grandma's house that day. So I looked in the Green Book and picked out an inn nearby that said they welcomed Negro travelers. It was a big house with lots of room. Most of the people there were businessmen traveling for their jobs. They each carried a Green Book. They said they could never do their job without it. We met a salesman named Jason who had traveled to all the states of the Union for his job. He told such funny stories. Mama laughed so hard she had tears rolling down her face. For the first time we left home, we were really happy. They're happy here. They feel safe. At the inn, I met a little boy who was traveling with his mother. It was the first time he had ever left home, and I could just tell he was scared. I thought of Mrs. Melody, Victor Green, Eddie, and all the other people who had helped us, and then I decided to give Brown Bear to the boy. I told him that Brown Bear was a good traveler. I'm too old for Brown Bear now, and the little boy needed him more than I do. Then I told his mother about the Green Book and showed her our copy. And here's the picture of Ruth generously sharing her bear. And that little boy has got like, whoa, happy surprise all over his face. They both look more settled and happy now. That night, before I went to sleep, I thought about our trip. It was not what I had expected. Traveling could be scary, that's for sure. It made me sad that some people were mean to Negroes. But it helped to know that good Black people all over the country had pitched in to help each other. It felt like I was part of one big family. Plus, tomorrow, I would finally see Grandma and tell her what a great Green Book guide I had been. And here we have the house in the dark. Ruth is feeling pretty confident now, happy that she was able to help her family so much. In our last illustration, we see Grandma and Ruth and a big hug and a copy of the Green Book right here. And that's a sweet picture that looks a lot like Ruth. Thank you for listening to this fun story.